General Vextar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the inevitable conquest, watching the primitive blue planet spin slowly below. His four arms were folded behind his back in the traditional Corfax military posture, his red predatory eyes studying the tactical displays with satisfaction. The conquest of Earth was proceeding exactly as planned, efficiently, methodically, perfectly. "Commander Zills," he called to his second-in-command, a shorter Corfax with gray skin and too many teeth arranged in what other species found unsettling patterns. "Report on the harvesting operations." Zills checked his datapad with webbed fingers, his smile showing every one of those disturbing teeth. "Excellent progress, General. We have collected over 3,000 specimens from the major population centers. The humans barely fought back. Most screamed and ran. Some attempted to use their primitive projectile weapons, but our shield systems rendered them completely ineffective." Vextar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction, a sound that had preceded victory on 47 conquered worlds across the Corfax Empire's 2 centuries of expansion. Humans were proving to be the easiest conquest yet, even easier than the timid Pelgari who had actually offered their own offspring in exchange for favorable treatment. No advanced weapons, no space fleet, no real military coordination, no unified planetary government. They were perfect for the Empire's needs, abundant, relatively intelligent, and completely defenseless. "Focus the harvesting on the smaller specimens," Vextar ordered, his tactical mind already planning the next phase of operations. "The young ones adapt faster to our training programs. They will make excellent workers in the mining colonies on Vexar Prime and the manufacturing facilities on Draco Station. Begin processing them immediately for psychological conditioning." "Already underway, sir," Zills replied, consulting another screen on his datapad. "We prioritize the collection of human offspring between what they call ages 5 and 15. They seem to have exceptionally strong emotional attachments to them, which makes the adult population more compliant. Several adult humans have already offered to surrender themselves in exchange for the return of collected juveniles." Standard exploitation protocol. Through the massive view screen that dominated the bridge, Vextar watched as his collection ships descended toward another human city. The sight filled him with pride and professional satisfaction. The Corfax Empire was built on efficient resource extraction, and sentient beings were simply another resource to be harvested and utilized, no different than minerals or energy sources. The Empire's economy depended on a constant supply of labor, and new species provided fresh workers before they learned resistance techniques. On the planet's surface far below, the human military was mounting what they called a defense. Vextar had been monitoring their communications with amusement. Their transmissions showed panic, confusion, and desperate attempts at coordination. Their weapons were chemical-based projectile throwers and crude explosive devices. Their vehicles moved on wheels or primitive atmospheric flight systems that belched combustion byproducts. They had nothing that could reach his fleet in orbit, nothing that could penetrate Corfax shielding, nothing that could challenge imperial military doctrine refined over 2 centuries of conquest. "Sir, incoming transmission from Collection Ship 7, announced the communications officer, a young Corfax female with ceremonial honor scars across her face. "Put it through," Vextar said, already anticipating a routine progress report. The holographic image of Captain Mork appeared above the central command console. His scaled face showed confusion rather than the confidence expected from a collection operation. "General, we are experiencing unexpected resistance at Collection Point Gamma. The local humans have formed some kind of defensive formation around their offspring." Vextar's eyes narrowed slightly. "Elaborate, Captain." "They have surrounded the area where we are gathering specimens with their own bodies. They are not attacking us directly, but they refuse to disperse despite application of intimidation protocols. Some are even placing themselves between our collection beams and their young. They seem willing to be taken instead. It is highly unusual behavior. Most species show initial resistance, but comply when they understand the futility of opposition." "Curious behavior," Vextar mused, his centuries of military experience analyzing the pattern. Are they attempting to negotiate? Do they have demands? No, sir. They're just standing there, forming human barriers. Some are making vocalizations. Our linguistic translators suggest they're expressions of defiance and protection. Many are repeating phrases like "over my dead body" and "you will not take our children." The emotional intensity readings are extremely high. Vextar considered this development. In his experience conquering dozens of worlds, most species showed some attachment to their offspring. It was a common biological imperative across sentient life. But they usually understood the futility of resistance when faced with superior technology and overwhelming force. The Corfax had collected juveniles from the Zilani homeworld without significant incident beyond initial protests. The Pelgari, as mentioned, had actually negotiated favorable trade agreements in exchange for contributing young to the imperial workforce. Use the pacification beams if necessary, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of 70 years of military service. We are on a schedule. The Empire has quotas to meet and contracts to fulfill. Apply standard compliance protocols. Yes, sir, Mork said, though his expression remained uncertain. The transmission ended. Vextar returned his attention to the tactical displays. The overall operation was still proceeding efficiently despite minor resistance. 17 collection ships were operating across the planet, gathering specimens from population centers while the main fleet maintained orbital superiority. The tactical board showed green confirmation lights from most operations. Standard procedure, standard results. General, Commander Zills approached with another data pad, his expression thoughtful. I have been analyzing human communication patterns across their various transmission networks. There appears to be increased chatter on their military channels. Expected, Vextar replied dismissively. They are likely coordinating their futile defensive efforts. All conquered species attempt some form of organized resistance before accepting their new reality. Perhaps, sir, but the tone of their communications has changed. Zills consulted his pad again, scrolling through translated intercepts. Our linguists note that their emotional indicators have shifted from fear and panic to something else entirely. Which is? Vextar asked, only mildly interested. Zills paused, as if uncertain how to phrase his analysis. The closest translation would be cold rage, sir. Not the hot anger of immediate response, but something calculated, something patient. Several transmissions reference timeline confirmations and deployment authorizations. It is almost as if they were expecting our arrival and are now implementing predetermined response protocols. Vextar's mandibles clicked dismissively. Emotional responses to helplessness, Commander. Conquered populations often experience psychological stages, including anger, before acceptance. Continue monitoring, but do not let it concern you unduly. No planetary species in recorded galactic history has ever presented a meaningful threat to a Corfax fleet. Our technology is centuries beyond theirs. Our tactics have been refined through 47 successful conquests. As if summoned by his confidence, another communication request came in, this time from Collection Ship 12 operating over what the humans called North America. The holographic image of Captain Hergal appeared, and Vextar immediately noticed the officer's agitated demeanor. General, this is Captain Hergal. We have an unusual situation developing that requires your attention. Speak, Captain. The local human military units have ceased their scattered attacks. Initially, they were responding to our collection operations with typical primitive resistance, uncoordinated projectile weapons, crude explosives, easily repelled. But in the last hour, they appear to be consolidating forces. Our sensors detect massive movement of their ground forces toward our collection sites. Organized movement. Coordinated movement. How many units? Vextar asked, his interest increasing slightly. Unknown, sir. They appear to be using some form of electronic interference that is degrading our deep scan capabilities. Our sensors are reporting conflicting data. However, based on visible observations, we estimate several thousand vehicles and tens of thousands of personnel. Possibly more. This information gave Vextar pause. The humans had shown no capability for organized resistance on this scale during the initial invasion 3 days ago. Their military had been scattered and ineffective, exactly as Imperial intelligence had predicted. Individual units had responded to specific incursions, but there had been no coordinated planetary response. Are they bringing up their most advanced weapons? Vextar asked, already running tactical calculations. Heavy armor? Long-range artillery? Whatever passes for their capital weapons. That is what is strange, sir, Hergal replied, his confusion evident. They appear to be bringing everything. Not just military units, but civilian vehicles, construction equipment, agricultural machinery, even what our cultural databases identify as personal transportation devices. It is as if their entire population is mobilizing. We are detecting movement from areas our intelligence classified as purely civilian population centers. Vextar felt the first stirring of unease, a sensation he had not experienced during a conquest operation in decades. In his centuries of military service, he had seen desperate last stands before. They were usually limited to professional military forces making final symbolic gestures. Civilian populations typically sought shelter, attempted to flee, or waited passively for the conflict to conclude. Mass civilian mobilization suggested either desperation or organization that shouldn't exist. How are they organizing this movement? Vextar demanded. We destroyed their primary command and communication centers in the first strike 3 days ago. Standard protocol for preventing coordinated resistance. Unknown, Sir, Hergal admitted. They seem to be using short-range communication systems, personal devices, peer-to-peer networks. It is remarkably decentralized and difficult for us to disrupt. There is no central command structure we can target. It is as if every human is receiving the same instructions through some distributed network. Maintain collection operations, Vextar ordered after a moment of consideration. If they wish to make themselves easier targets by concentrating their forces, so be it. Prepare bombardment systems if they become too much of a nuisance. Show them the futility of resistance. Understood, sir, Hergal acknowledged before the transmission ended. As the holographic image faded, Vextar noticed that several other collection teams were reporting similar developments. Green status lights on the tactical board were shifting to yellow caution indicators. The humans were moving with purpose and coordination that seemed to exceed their documented technological and organizational capabilities. Commander Zills, he called sharply, access the Imperial database immediately. I want all available information on human society, military organization, psychological profiles, and behavioral patterns. Full analysis. Right away, sir, Zills responded, moving quickly to his station. While Zills worked at his console, Vextar studied the tactical display more carefully, applying his decades of military training to the emerging patterns. The human movements were forming distinct and recognizable shapes. They were not randomly rushing toward collection sites in panic or confusion. They were creating converging approach routes, establishing supply lines, forming support positions. These were military maneuvers, not civilian panic. Sir, Zills announced after several minutes. I have the database files. According to our preliminary survey conducted 6 months ago, humans are a relatively young species with a fragmented political structure. Multiple nation-states with a documented history of frequent conflicts among themselves. No unified planetary government or military command structure. Over 190 separate political entities at last count. Cultural divisions along multiple lines, including ideology, religion, ethnicity, and resource distribution. Yet they appear to be coordinating a planet-wide response with remarkable efficiency. Vextar observed, his unease growing. How is that possible for a species documented as politically fragmented? The database also notes several relevant behavioral characteristics. Zills continued, scrolling through information. Humans have an unusually strong protective instinct regarding their offspring compared to other surveyed species. Multiple behavioral studies suggest this drives much of their social organization and decision-making. The biological investment in offspring is significant. Extended childhood development periods, intensive parental care, multi-generational family structures. Many species protect their young, Vextar said. It rarely translates to effective military action beyond immediate defensive reactions. True, sir. But there are some unusual notes in the xenobiology reports that were flagged but not prioritized. Zills paused, his expression troubled. Humans evolved on what the classification system designates as a Class 12 death world. Vextar turned sharply from the display. Repeat that, Commander. Class 12 death world, sir, Zills confirmed, rechecking his data. Extreme weather variations ranging from lethal heat to lethal cold. High gravity at 1.0, standard compared to the Corfax norm of 0.7. Aggressive predator species in multiple environmental niches. Frequent natural disasters, including seismic activity, volcanic eruptions, severe storms. Toxic atmospheric variations. Rapid pathogen evolution requiring constant immune system adaptation. The planet scores high on every danger metric. That classification cannot be correct, Vextar insisted. Death world species typically develop superior defensive capabilities, enhanced physical characteristics, advanced natural weaponry. They do not develop as these humans have, relatively fragile, no natural armor, limited physical strength compared to their body mass, no environmental adaptation for their planet's extreme conditions. Zills checked his data again, scrolling through detailed xenobiology reports. The analysis suggests that humans developed intelligence and social cooperation as their primary survival adaptations instead of individual physical enhancement. They learned to use tools and work together to overcome environmental challenges that would have killed them individually. Cooperative hunting, shared resource management, collective defense against predators. Their evolutionary path prioritized cognitive development and social bonds over physical capability. Interesting, Vextar conceded, but irrelevant to the current situation. Tools and cooperation mean nothing against superior technology and overwhelming force. We have seen it on 47 worlds. Superior numbers and determination cannot overcome shields, energy weapons, and orbital supremacy. A new alarm sounded on the bridge, a priority warning that cut through normal operational sounds. The weapons officer, a tall Corfax with ceremonial command scars across his face, looked up from his console with an expression of confusion and concern. General, I am detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. Multiple point sources. Explain, Vextar commanded, moving to the weapons station. Multiple point sources of electromagnetic radiation are appearing across all continents simultaneously. The signatures are not consistent with human technology as we observed it during our reconnaissance missions. They are more sophisticated, using frequency modulation and power outputs that suggest far more advanced generating capability. Vextar studied the sensor data personally. Dozens of energy sources were indeed appearing across the planet's surface, seemingly emerging from underground installations or previously undetected facilities. The power signatures were substantial and growing stronger. Are these weapons? He asked, his tactical mind already considering implications. Unknown, sir. The energy output is significant, but the pattern is unlike anything in our database of known planetary defense systems. It does not match any configuration we have encountered in previous conquests. Sir, the communications officer interrupted urgently. Priority transmission from Collection Ship 3. Captain Valton. He says it is urgent. Put it through immediately, Vextar ordered. Captain Valton appeared in holographic form, and Vextar immediately registered that his usually calm demeanor had been replaced by obvious agitation and something approaching alarm. General, we need immediate support. The humans have launched a coordinated attack on our collection operation. Details, Captain, Vextar demanded, his full attention now focused on the developing situation. They came from multiple directions simultaneously, sir, using vehicles and weapons we had not previously detected. Our pacification beams had minimal effect. They are employing kinetic projectile weapons, but not the primitive chemically propelled ones we documented. These are electromagnetic accelerators, magnetically driven projectiles moving at velocities far exceeding our initial assessments. Impossible, Vextar said. Our reconnaissance indicated no such technology. Our armor is designed to withstand Class 8 weapons. Human projectile weapons were classified as barely Class 2. I'm sending you the sensor data now, Sir, Volton said urgently. They appear to have modified their weapons systems substantially. The projectiles are moving at velocities approaching Class 7 classification. More troubling, they are targeting specific weak points in our collection ship design with impossible accuracy. Joints, sensor arrays, maneuvering thrusters. They know our vulnerabilities. As the data streamed through to the bridge, Vextar watched the analysis with growing concern. The projectile velocities were indeed far higher than any reconnaissance had indicated. More troubling, the targeting precision suggested detailed knowledge of Corfax ship design that no external species should possess. How did they acquire this level of technical knowledge about our vessels? Vextar asked, the question directed as much to himself as to Volton. Unknown, Sir, Volton replied. But they're also employing coordinated tactical movements that suggest military training consistent with our own doctrine. Flanking maneuvers, suppression fire, coordinated withdrawal, and advance. These are not the primitive defensive responses we observed 3 days ago. These are professional military tactics. Sir, Commander Zills approached with his data pad, displaying multiple incoming reports. I am seeing similar reports from collection teams across the planet. Ships 3, 7, 9, 12, 14, and 16 all reporting coordinated human attacks using weapons and tactics beyond our initial assessments. The humans appear to have rapidly adapted their capabilities. Vextar stared at the accumulating reports, his decades of military experience struggling to explain what he was observing. In 70 years of service, he had never seen a conquered species demonstrate such rapid adaptive capability. Adaptation between campaigns was expected, lessons learned over years or decades. But this was happening in real time, in days. The humans were not just fighting back randomly. They were learning, adapting, and evolving their tactics with impossible speed. Sir, the communications officer announced, her voice showing strain. We are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It appears to be directed at the entire fleet simultaneously on all frequencies. From what source? Vextar demanded. Unknown, sir. The signal is coming from multiple locations simultaneously across the planet. It is being broadcast and rebroadcast through what appears to be a distributed network. We cannot pinpoint a single origin. Put it through, Vextar ordered, preparing himself for whatever desperate plea or futile threat the humans might offer. The main view screen flickered and shifted from the tactical display to show the image of a human. It was an older male with gray hair at his temples and what Vextar's cultural database identified as military insignia indicating high rank. The human's face showed no fear, no panic, no desperation. His eyes were hard, calculating, and when he spoke, his voice carried an authority that made several of Vextar's bridge officers shift uncomfortably in their stations. To the alien fleet in orbit around Earth, the human began, his voice steady and clear. You have made a grave mistake. You have taken our children from their homes, from their families, from their world. We are giving you one opportunity to return every human you have captured and leave our system immediately. One opportunity. One chance. Vextar stepped forward to the view screen, drawing himself up to his full, impressive height. I am General Vextar of the Corfax Empire, commander of the 3rd Conquest Fleet. Your species has been selected for integration into the Imperial workforce. Your young will be trained and utilized in service to the Empire. Resistance is futile. Your technology is primitive. Your military is fragmented. You have no capability to threaten this fleet. Surrender will be easier for your population than prolonged resistance. The human's expression did not change. He did not show anger or fear or any of the emotional responses Vextar had learned to expect from conquered species. His face remained calm, almost patient, and his eyes never wavered from the camera. "You have 1 hour," the human said. "After that single hour, we will begin demonstrating why taking human children was the worst mistake your empire has ever made. 1 hour, General. We suggest you use it wisely." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. The tactical displays continued showing their data, but every officer on the bridge had frozen in place, processing what they had just witnessed. Commander Zills was the first to speak, his voice uncertain. "Sir, should we accelerate the collection operations? Complete harvesting before they can mount any coordinated response?" Vextar stood staring at the blank screen where the human's face had been. There had been something in those eyes, something that reminded him of the apex predators from his own homeworld. A cold calculation that spoke not of desperation, but of absolute commitment. Not the hot fury of immediate response, but the cold patience of a hunter who had already won and was simply waiting for the prey to realize it. "Sir?" Zills repeated, his voice more urgent. "Your orders?" Vextar forced himself to respond, pushing aside the unease that had settled in his chest. "Continue operations as planned," he commanded, his voice carrying more certainty than he felt. "But prepare the bombardment systems. Ready all capital weapons. We may need to demonstrate our superiority more directly than anticipated. Show them that resistance truly is futile." As his crew returned to their duties with renewed urgency, Vextar continued staring at the blue planet below. Something fundamental had changed in those 3 days since the initial invasion. The humans were no longer the same species they had first encountered, and that realization filled him with a dread he could not entirely explain or dismiss. 57 minutes later, General Vextar learned exactly what human parents were truly capable of when their children were threatened. The first indication came from Collection Ship 9, operating over what the humans called Australia, the smallest of their major continental landmasses. Captain Rellas had been in the middle of reporting routine harvesting progress when his transmission suddenly cut to static and interference. When communications restored approximately 3 minutes later, his voice carried a panic that Vextar had never heard from a Corfax officer in 7 decades of service. "General, we are under attack." "Repeat, we are under massive coordinated attack." "Calm yourself, Captain," Vextar commanded sharply, though he felt his own tension rising. "Report your situation clearly and professionally." "They came from underground positions, sir," Rellas said, his words tumbling out rapidly. Human vehicles and personnel emerged from concealed positions simultaneously across a 50-kilometer radius. Our sensors detected nothing until they were already firing. Nothing. It was as if they materialized from nowhere. Our ground-penetrating radar showed empty terrain until the moment they appeared. "What is your ship status?" Vextar demanded. "Portside collection bay is compromised, sir. Main engines are operating at 60% efficiency. Maneuvering thrusters offline. Sir, these weapons are not what we cataloged during reconnaissance. They're firing projectiles that should not be able to penetrate our hull armor, but they are finding weak points with surgical precision. Every shot targeting critical systems. Engines, sensors, weapons, communications relays. They know exactly where to hit us. How many human forces are engaging you?" "Estimated 1,200 vehicles, sir, but they are coordinating with infantry units emerging from positions our deep scans indicated were empty terrain. Thousands of infantry. It is as if they tunneled an entire army beneath us without our knowledge. The coordination is impossible. They are operating like a unified force with perfect communication. Withdraw to safe altitude and provide orbital fire support," Vextar ordered, falling back on standard tactical doctrine. "Sir, we tried that," Rellas replied, his voice showing strain. "They're tracking our movement patterns and adjusting their positions accordingly. Every time we attempt to gain altitude, they shift to maintain optimal firing angles. It is as if they know exactly how our maneuvering systems work, how our tactical computers calculate safe positions. They are predicting our movements." Before Vextar could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. Multiple priority warnings cascaded across the tactical display. Commander Zills, rushed to his station, his gray skin turning pale as he processed incoming data. General, we are receiving distress calls from 7 collection ships simultaneously. Ships 3, 7, 9, 12, 14, 16, and 17. All reporting coordinated human attacks. All reporting damage and casualties. Display tactical overview, Vextar commanded, moving to the central holographic projector. The main display shifted to show the entire planet with marked positions of all Corfax forces. The 17 collection ships that had been operating safely across different continents just 1 hour ago were now showing damage indicators and emergency status markers. Yellow caution lights shifting to red critical warnings across the board. How is this possible? Vextar demanded, his voice rising despite his decades of command experience. 3 days ago, these humans could barely coordinate a response between their own fractured military units. Now they're simultaneously attacking 17 ships across an entire planet with perfect timing. Sir, the sensor officer called out, his voice tight with concern. I am detecting massive energy buildups at multiple surface locations. The signatures are unlike anything in our database. Power outputs exceeding anything we observed during reconnaissance. Show me immediately, Vextar ordered. The display zoomed to focus on one of the energy sources. It appeared to be emerging from what their initial surveys had identified as a simple human industrial facility, a manufacturing center for primitive vehicles. But the energy signature was now showing power output consistent with military-grade systems. Analysis suggests some kind of directed energy weapon, the sensor officer reported, his mandibles clicking nervously. But the configuration is completely unknown. It does not match any known human technology. The frequency modulation and power focusing methods are far too sophisticated. Impossible, Vextar said, though the word was becoming meaningless. Humans do not possess energy weapon technology. Our reconnaissance was thorough. 6 months of observation. They have chemical combustion, basic nuclear fission, primitive electronics. They do not have directed energy systems. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. Priority transmission from collection ship 16. Captain Mortesh. The holographic image of Captain Mortesh appeared, and Vextar immediately noticed that the background showed emergency lighting and damaged console displays. Mortesh's face was bleeding from a head wound, purple Corfax blood mixing with the emergency lighting. General, urgent report, Mortesh said, clearly struggling to maintain composure. The humans have deployed some kind of kinetic bombardment system from high altitude. Projectiles striking from extreme altitude at velocities we cannot effectively track. Explain clearly, Vextar demanded. Projectiles striking from high altitude positions at extreme velocity, sir. Our point defense systems cannot track them effectively until they are already in terminal approach. Initial analysis suggests they're using purely kinetic energy with no explosive components, but the impact force is equivalent to our Class 9 orbital bombardment weapons. One strike destroyed our starboard collection bay entirely. 20 personnel casualties. Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. Class 9 weapons were restricted to capital ship armaments. No planetary species in the Empire's 2-century history had ever possessed such capabilities during initial contact. Where are these projectiles originating? Unknown, sir. Detection systems cannot track them until they are already in terminal phase. It is as if they are coming from orbital positions, but we have accounted for all objects in orbit. Our fleet controls orbital space completely. Sir, Commander Zills approached, his data pad showing accumulating information. I have been analyzing the attack patterns across all engaged collection ships. The humans appear to be targeting our operations with specific knowledge of our ship vulnerabilities, tactical procedures, and operational doctrine. This is not random defensive action. This is coordinated offensive operation based on detailed intelligence about our capabilities. How could they possibly possess such knowledge? Vextar demanded, his mind racing through possibilities. We detected them less than 2 years ago. Our first reconnaissance missions were only 6 months ago with full stealth protocols. They should not even know we exist, much less have detailed specifications of our technology. Unknown, sir, Zills replied. But there is something else. I have been monitoring their communications during these attacks. The linguistic analysis is disturbing. In what way? They are not communicating like a desperate population mounting a last defense, sir. Their transmissions are calm, coordinated, professional. Military jargon, tactical updates, logistics coordination. They are treating this like a planned military operation that is proceeding according to pre-established parameters. They sound like us, sir. Like Corfax officers executing a battle plan. Vextar studied the tactical display again, forcing himself to see the patterns with fresh perspective. The distribution of attacks was indeed too coordinated to be spontaneous. The humans had somehow anticipated the locations and timing of collection operations and prepared appropriate responses. But how? Even with the warning transmission, 1 hour was insufficient time to mount such coordinated action unless it had been prepared in advance. Sir, incoming transmission from Captain Valton on Ship 3, the communications officer announced. Put it through. Valton's holographic image appeared, but instead of his usual composed demeanor, his face showed something Vextar had never seen from a Corfax officer in combat. Pure, undiluted fear. General, we need immediate evacuation, Valton said, his voice shaking. Repeat, we need immediate evacuation authorization. Report your status. Captain, Vextar ordered. My ship is surrounded, sir. Human forces have established a perimeter at precisely the maximum effective range of our defensive weapons. They are not advancing, but they have made it explicitly clear that any attempt to continue collection operations will result in our complete destruction. They are not threatening, sir. They are promising. Are you requesting permission to withdraw from your operational area? No, sir, Valton said, and his voice broke slightly. You do not understand. We cannot withdraw. They have somehow disabled our main engines without penetrating our hull. We are trapped, dead in the air, completely immobilized. Vextar felt his command authority crumbling. Explain how they disabled your engines without inflicting hull damage. That should be impossible. We believe they're using some form of electromagnetic pulse weapon, sir. But the technology involved should be decades beyond their documented capabilities. The effect was surgically precise, targeting only our propulsion systems while leaving life support, communications, and internal systems fully operational. They did not want to kill us. They wanted to trap us. To make a point, Vextar looked around his bridge at officers who had conquered dozens of worlds without significant resistance. They now sat in stunned silence as a single planet species dictated terms to the Empire's finest fleet. His tactical training, his decades of experience, everything was failing to explain what was happening. Sir, the weapons officer called out urgently. I am detecting new energy signatures approaching our orbital position from the planet's surface. From where exactly? Vextar demanded. The planet's surface, sir. Multiple projectiles have been launched and are on intercept courses with our fleet positions. Trajectory analysis indicates they will reach our orbital altitude. Time to impact, 17 minutes, sir. Activate all defensive systems, Vextar commanded. All ships are to prepare for evasive maneuvers. Full defensive protocols. Sir, the projectiles are following complex trajectory patterns, the weapons officer reported, his voice showing strain. They appear to be correcting course to compensate for our movements. These are not ballistic projectiles. They are guided munitions with active tracking systems. Vextar stared at the approaching projectiles on the tactical display. Guided munitions capable of reaching orbital altitude meant the humans possessed technology far beyond their initial assessments. It meant months or years of development that should have been impossible to conceal. It meant everything the Corfax Empire understood about human capabilities was wrong. Sir, Commander Zills announced, his voice tight. Incoming transmission from the planet's surface. Same source as the previous warning. Put it through, Vextar ordered, knowing with cold certainty that his entire understanding of the situation was about to shift again. The same gray-haired human appeared on the screen, but his expression had changed. Where before there had been controlled anger and cold warning, Now, there was something else entirely. Something implacable and final. General Vextar, the human said, his voice carrying across the bridge with quiet authority. Your hour has expired. Since you chose to ignore our warning, we will now demonstrate the cost of threatening human children. You will now understand what it means to face parents who have spent 18 months preparing for this exact moment. Vextar felt his blood freeze. 18 months? You possess no weapons capable of threatening a Corfax fleet, Vextar replied, though his voice carried far less conviction than before. You're a primitive species. Your technology is centuries behind the Empire. This is impossible, is it? The human's expression remained cold and calculating. Did you really think a species capable of surviving on a Class 12 death world would fail to notice when alien ships began observing our planet? Did you think we would not detect your reconnaissance missions? Did you assume we were too primitive to realize what was coming? Vextar stared at the human, his mind racing through implications. The reconnaissance missions had been conducted with full stealth protocols, the best technology the Empire possessed. No planetary species had ever detected them before. Your stealth systems are impressive, General, the human continued, as if reading his thoughts. But not perfect. We detected gravitational anomalies from your ships 18 months ago. Your scout vessels displaced space-time in ways our deep space monitoring stations could measure. We knew you were watching us. We knew you were studying us. And we knew exactly what species like yours do when they study primitive worlds. The human leaned forward slightly, and Vextar saw something in those eyes that he recognized from the most dangerous predators in known space. Pure, focused, patient intent. We have been watching your species for longer than you know, General. We have studied your ships, your tactics, your technology. We analyzed your conquest patterns across 47 worlds. We know every weakness, every vulnerability, every tactical procedure in your operational manual. Every single detail. That is impossible, Vextar said, but the words sounded hollow even to himself. Is it? The human's voice remained steady. Did you really think we would not investigate when we detected alien observation? Did you assume we would simply wait passively for invasion? We are the children of Earth, General. We spent 1,000,000 years learning to kill everything that threatened our families. Everything. We do not wait for threats to materialize. We prepare for them. Sir, the sensor officer interrupted urgently. The approaching projectiles have changed trajectory again. They are targeting our most vulnerable ship positions with precision that suggests detailed knowledge of our fleet formation protocols. How long until impact? Vextar demanded. 14 minutes, sir. The human on the screen continued speaking, his voice carrying a terrible finality. Every parent on this planet is now part of our military command structure, General. Every engineer, every scientist, every person with any relevant skill has been working for 18 months to ensure that when you took our children, you would face the entire combined capability of our species. Every resource, every mind, every hand working toward a single purpose. Sir, Commander Zills whispered urgently, approaching Vextar's command position. If they had been preparing for 18 months with captured Corfax technology, they would know everything about our defensive capabilities, our weapons, our armor, our tactics, our communication protocols, our ship designs, everything. Vextar finished the thought with growing horror. They would know exactly how to defeat us. General, the human said, his voice cutting through Vextar's realization. Your species has made one critical error in judgment. You assumed that, because we appeared less advanced, we were less intelligent. You failed to understand that humans do not develop technology for its own sake. We develop it when we need it. When our children are threatened, General, we need it very much. Sir, the communications officer announced, voice shaking. All collection ships are reporting the same status. They are surrounded, disabled, trapped. Engines down, weapon systems offline, but life support and communications maintained. They're not destroying us. They're making us watch. And right now, the human continued, we needed technology capable of rescuing our children from an alien empire that thought we would be easy prey. We needed it desperately. So we built it. In 18 months, we unified every nation, shared every secret, combined every capability. We turned our entire world into a fortress, and we waited for you to make your mistake. The tactical display showed the approaching projectiles were now only 10 minutes from impact. Vextar realized with absolute certainty that his entire fleet was trapped. The humans had somehow disabled every collection ship while demonstrating orbital strike capabilities that matched or exceeded Imperial technology. Everything was falling apart. "What do you want?" Vextar asked, and he hated how defeated his voice sounded. "The immediate and unconditional return of every human being you have taken," the human replied. "Your collection ships will land at designated coordinates and release all captives. Your fleet will then depart our system and never return. You will report to your empire that Earth is now a prohibited zone. Those are our terms. And if we refuse?" Vextar asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then you will discover why the rest of the galaxy should have left the children of a death world species alone," the human said. "Then you will learn what happens when you threaten a species that spent millions of years as both prey and predator. A species that learned to work together against impossible odds. A species that never, ever stops fighting when our children are in danger." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in absolute silence except for the persistent alarms and warning signals. "Sir," the weapons officer said quietly, his voice carrying resignation, "the approaching projectiles are maintaining precise targeting solutions. Impact in 8 minutes. Our defensive systems cannot guarantee successful interception." Vextar looked around at his senior staff. Every face showed the same realization he was experiencing. They had not conquered a primitive world. They had walked into a carefully prepared trap set by a species that had been planning their response for 18 months. Every action the humans had taken had been calculated. Every response had been prepared. Even the initial apparent weakness had been a strategy. "Commander Zills," Vextar said finally, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. "Signal all collection ships. Prepare to comply with human demands immediately." "Sir," Zills said, clearly struggling with the order. "You heard my command. We're going to return their offspring and withdraw from this system immediately. Full compliance with all demands." "But sir, the Empire has never retreated from a conquest operation," another officer protested. "Our reputation, our standing in the galactic community, it will be destroyed." Vextar looked at the tactical display showing his disabled ships and the approaching weapons that demonstrated technological capabilities that should not exist. "The Empire has never tried to take the children of a species this dangerous," he replied. "The Empire has never encountered a species willing to unify an entire planet in 18 months. We are going to survive this day and deliver a warning that may save the Empire from a far worse fate. Signal the human forces," he ordered. "We will comply with their terms." "Full compliance." "Sir," the communications officer acknowledged. "Transmitting acceptance of terms now." A different human appeared on the screen this time, a woman with short dark hair and military insignia different from the previous speaker. Her face showed professional competence and cold satisfaction. Her voice was crisp and carried absolute authority. "General Vextar, this is Admiral Sarah Chun, Unified Earth Defense Command. Your cooperation is noted and accepted. Landing coordinates are being transmitted to your collection ships now. You have 2 hours to complete prisoner transfers. Any deviation from these instructions will be considered hostile action and will result in the immediate destruction of your fleet. Do you understand these terms?" "Understood, Admiral," Vextar replied, his voice hollow. Admiral Chin's expression remained cold and professional. "General, a word of advice for you to carry back to your empire. Humans have a saying that you should understand. Do not start a fight with someone who has nothing left to lose. Today, you learned a variation of that wisdom. Never threaten the children of a species that spent millions of years learning to kill everything that endangered their young. Never assume that primitive technology means primitive thinking. And never, ever underestimate parents protecting their children." The transmission ended, and Vextar found himself staring at a tactical display that showed his mighty fleet completely outmaneuvered by a species the Empire had dismissed as primitive and helpless. Sir, Commander Zills asked quietly, how do we report this to Imperial Command? How do we explain that the Third Conquest Fleet, which successfully conquered 47 worlds, was defeated by a single planet species in less than 4 days? Vextar considered the question carefully. How did one explain that the Empire's finest fleet had been defeated not by superior numbers or more advanced technology, but by a species that had simply been underestimated, by a species that had turned their supposed weakness into strategic advantage, by a species that had sacrificed 3,000 of their own as intelligence operatives while preparing planetary defenses? We tell them the truth, he said finally, his voice carrying hard-won wisdom. We tell them that we encountered a species that was far more dangerous than our intelligence indicated. A species that is individually weak, but collectively unstoppable. A species that does not react to threats, but anticipates and prepares for them. And we recommend that the Empire classify Earth and its human population as a Level 9 threat zone, with absolute prohibition on contact. Sir, another officer protested, the Empire has never designated a Level 9 threat zone for a single planet species. That classification is reserved for galaxy-spanning civilizations with overwhelming military capability. The Empire has never encountered a single planet species capable of this level of tactical planning, technological adaptation, and unified mobilization, Vextar replied. The Empire has never faced a species that can go from apparent primitives to credible military threat in 18 months. We thought we were harvesting prey. We were actually threatening an apex predator that had been watching us the entire time. As he watched his collection ships begin their descent to the planet's surface under human escort, Vextar realized that the Corfax Empire had just learned a lesson that would reshape their understanding of what made a species truly dangerous. It was not their technology, or their weapons, or their numbers, or their age as a civilization. It was what they were willing to sacrifice to protect what they loved most. It was their ability to unify in the face of existential threat. It was their capacity to plan, to prepare, to deceive, and to strike with overwhelming force at exactly the right moment. The children of Earth had taught the Corfax Empire something that no other species in 200 years of conquest had managed to convey. Some species should never be threatened. Some worlds should never be touched. And some offspring should absolutely never be taken. General Vextar stood on the bridge watching the most humiliating moment in Corfax military history unfold on the main display. His collection ships were landing on Earth's surface one by one, each escorted by human aircraft that moved in precision formations he recognized from Imperial tactical manuals. It was as if the humans had studied Corfax doctrine and were deliberately demonstrating their understanding. Sir, Commander Zills reported from his station, his voice subdued. Collection Ship 7 has completed prisoner transfer. They report that all human captives are being returned unharmed and in good health. Medical scans show no signs of physical mistreatment. Do not refer to them as captives, Vextar said quietly, his gaze fixed on the planet below. Call them what they truly were. Volunteers. Intelligence operatives. Soldiers. Zills looked surprised by the correction, but nodded. Yes, sir. All human volunteers from Ship 7 have been returned to their population. Through the view screen, Vextar could see human military formations positioned around each landing site. They maintained respectful distances from the Corfax ships, weapons clearly visible but not aimed. Their presence was unmistakably that of an overwhelming force held in check only by choice, not by capability. Every position was textbook perfect. Every unit positioned with tactical precision. Sir, the communications officer announced. Incoming transmission from Collection Ship 12. Captain Hergal requests to speak with you directly. Put it through, Vextar ordered. Captain Hergal appeared in holographic form, and Vextar immediately noticed the shaken expression on his subordinate's face. General, I need to report something unusual about the prisoner transfer. Something you need to know. Speak freely, Captain. The humans, sir, Hergal said, his voice showing confusion and respect. They were organized during captivity. Even the children. When we opened the collection bays, expecting panic or chaos, we found them arranged in groups. The adults had organized themselves to protect and comfort the younger ones. The children themselves were calm, disciplined, following adult instructions. It was as if they knew rescue was coming, as if they had been trained for this exact situation. Vextar felt another piece of understanding fall into place. Even in captivity, facing unknown alien captors on ships traveling through space, the humans had maintained their social structure and protective instincts. They had not broken. They had adapted. Sir, Hergal continued, his voice showing something like awe. There's something else you must know. One of the adult humans approached me directly before disembarking. She spoke our language, sir, fluently. Perfect grammar and technical vocabulary. Vextar felt his mandibles click involuntarily. That should be impossible. No human should know Corfax language. We have never had contact before this operation. She spoke it fluently, sir, Hergal insisted. She said her name was Dr. Elizabeth Rodriguez and that she was a linguistic specialist. She had apparently learned our language by listening to our communications during the 3 days of captivity. She wanted me to give you a direct message. What message? Vextar asked, though he suspected he already knew. She said to tell you that every human you took was a volunteer, Hergal reported. She said they volunteered to be taken so they could study our ships from the inside, analyze our technology, and report their findings back to Earth's military command while the rest of their species prepared the rescue operation. She said you should understand that even your captives were soldiers gathering intelligence. The bridge fell into absolute silence. Every officer stopped their tasks and stared at Captain Hergal's holographic image. The implications were staggering. Sir, Zills whispered, approaching Vextar's command position. If the humans deliberately allowed themselves to be captured as part of their intelligence gathering operation, then this entire invasion was not just anticipated. It was used. We were not conquering them. We were walking into an intelligence trap from the very first collection operation. Vextar nodded slowly, his tactical mind assembling the full picture. They sacrificed 3,000 of their own, including children, to learn everything about our ships, our technology, our procedures. They turned their greatest apparent weakness into a strategic advantage. While we thought we were harvesting specimens, they were gathering the intelligence needed to defeat us. General, Admiral Chin's voice came through the communication system. This is Earth Defense Command. All prisoner transfers have been completed successfully. We are now ready to discuss the final terms of your departure. Put her through on main screen, Vextar ordered. Admiral Chin's face appeared, and Vextar noticed she was now speaking from what appeared to be a sophisticated military command center. The displays behind her showed real-time tracking of every Corfax vessel, orbital mechanics calculations, and defensive system status indicators. The technology on display was far beyond what reconnaissance had documented. Admiral, Vextar began, keeping his voice carefully neutral. I must ask a question that has tactical importance for my report. How long have you been planning this operation? The coordination and preparation evident here suggests far more than 3 days or even 1 hour of organization. Since the day we detected your first scout ship, General, Chin replied without hesitation. 18 months ago. We knew you were coming long before you realized we could see you. 18 months? Zills gasped from his station. But we only began visible observation missions 6 months ago using advanced stealth technology. You should not have been able to detect anything before that. You began visible observation missions 6 months ago. Admiral Chun corrected with a slight smile. Your stealth systems are impressive by your standards, but not perfect. Our deep space monitoring stations detected gravitational anomalies from your ships long before you realized we could measure such distortions. We saw you watching us, so we decided to watch you back. Vextar felt his understanding of the situation shift again. Everything they had observed about Earth had been carefully managed. So everything we observed about your species was what you wanted us to observe. Your apparent primitiveness, your political fragmentation, your lack of coordinated defense. Yes, Chen confirmed. We needed you to believe we were primitive and disorganized. We needed you to target our population, specifically our children, because that was the one thing absolutely guaranteed to unify every human government military organization, and civilian population under a single command structure. We knew from studying your previous conquests that you always targeted offspring. You did it on 47 worlds. So we knew you would do it here. You used your own offspring as bait, Vextar said, unable to keep the horror from his voice. You deliberately made your children vulnerable to alien abduction. What species does that? We use volunteers who understood the risk and chose to help protect humanity, Chen replied, her voice firm. Every adult who allowed themselves to be taken knew exactly what they were doing. Every parent who let their child participate understood that this was the only way to ensure the safety of all human children. We explained the situation, the risks, and the importance. Then we asked for volunteers. General, we had more volunteers than we could use. Parents lining up to offer themselves and their children for the intelligence mission. That is what you failed to understand about humans. We protect our children above everything. And sometimes it means some must risk themselves so all others can be safe. The children agreed to this? Vextar asked, thinking of the young humans he had seen during collection operations. Even the smallest ones had shown courage far beyond their apparent age. General, you clearly do not understand human children, Chun said, and for the first time there was warmth in her voice. When we explained that aliens were coming to take children away from their families, that these aliens had done this on dozens of other worlds, and that volunteers could help make sure no human child ever faced that threat again, we were overwhelmed with responses. Children as young as 6 years old volunteering to help protect their siblings and friends. Teenagers demanding to be included in the operation. We had to turn away thousands of volunteers because we could only use so many without arousing your suspicion. Sir, the sensor officer called out urgently. I am detecting massive energy buildups across the planet's surface. Much larger signatures than before. Power outputs exceeding anything we have observed. Admiral Chin smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator revealing their teeth. General, the weapons we used to disable your fleet and the orbital projectiles we demonstrated represent approximately 1% of our total defensive capability. 1%. We wanted you to believe you faced significant resistance, so you would comply with our demands. But you should understand what we actually built in 18 months. Impossible, Vextar breted. The weapons you demonstrated already exceed most species' planetary defense capabilities. The display behind Chun shifted to show a global view of Earth. Across every continent, hundreds of energy signatures became visible. Massive installations that had been hidden or disguised as civilian infrastructure. The power outputs were staggering. 18 months ago, Chun continued, when we realized an alien empire was planning to harvest our population, every nation on Earth agreed to share all military technology and scientific knowledge without reservation. Every scientist, engineer, and manufacturer was tasked with developing defense systems. We built this entire defensive network, thousands of installations, tens of thousands of weapons, complete orbital defense grid, all of it in less than 2 years. We unified our entire species around a single goal. Protect our children. Prepare for your arrival. The display showed the true scale of Earth's defenses. Orbital weapons platforms that had been invisible until now. Underground installations connected by global networks. Energy weapons that could reach beyond the planet's atmosphere. The entire planet had been transformed into an integrated fortress. We could have destroyed your fleet the moment it entered our solar system. Chun continued, her voice carrying absolute certainty. Our tracking systems detected your approach 3 days before you began operations. We had firing solutions calculated before you entered orbit. But simply destroying you would not have sent the appropriate message to your empire. What message? Vextar asked, though he now understood. That Earth is defended by a species that will go to any length to protect its people, Chen replied. The humans are not prey. That we do not wait passively for threats to materialize. We identify them, we study them, we prepare for them, and we defeat them. We wanted your empire to understand that attempting to harvest humans comes with consequences. Real consequences. Strategic consequences. Sir, Commander Zills approached with his datapad, showing sensor analysis. I have been analyzing the defensive installations the humans have revealed. Based on the energy signatures, deployment patterns, and integration level, they have essentially turned their entire planet into a coordinated weapons platform. The computational resources required for this level of coordination would exceed our fleet's capabilities. More than that, Admiral Chen said, clearly having heard the comment through the communication link, we have also been busy in space beyond your detection range. The tactical display suddenly changed. New contacts appeared throughout Earth's solar system. Dozens of objects that had not been visible moments before. Stealth ships, defense platforms, weapons satellites, some in orbit around Earth's moon, others positioned at strategic points throughout the inner solar system. All had been completely invisible until this moment. Stealth ships, Vextar breathed, recognizing the configuration. You learned our stealth technology from the scout ships you captured and built your own version. How many? Enough, General, Chen replied. More than enough. We learned a great deal from the scout ships we captured 18 months ago. We studied your technology, reverse-engineered what we needed, and improved upon it. Then we built and positioned these installations throughout our solar system over the past year. All while you thought we were primitive and unaware of your presence. What message? Vextar asked, though he suspected he already knew. She said to tell you that every human you took was a volunteer, Hergal reported. She said they volunteered to be taken so they could study our ships from the inside, analyze our technology, and report their findings back to Earth's military command while the rest of their species prepared the rescue operation. She said you should understand that even your captives were soldiers gathering intelligence. The bridge fell into absolute silence. Every officer stopped their tasks and stared at Captain Hergel's holographic image. The implications were staggering. Sir, Zills whispered, approaching Vextar's command position. If the humans deliberately allowed themselves to be captured as part of their intelligence gathering operation, then this entire invasion was not just anticipated. It was used. We were not conquering them. We were walking into an intelligence trap from the very first collection operation. Vextar nodded slowly, his tactical mind assembling the full picture. They sacrificed 3,000 of their own, including children, to learn everything about our ships, our technology, our procedures. They turned their greatest apparent weakness into a strategic advantage. While we thought we were harvesting specimens, they were gathering the intelligence needed to defeat us. General, Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. This is Earth Defense Command. All prisoner transfers have been completed successfully. We are now ready to discuss the final terms of your departure. Put her through on main screen, Vextar ordered. Admiral Chen's face appeared, and Vextar noticed she was now speaking from what appeared to be a sophisticated military command center. The displays behind her showed real-time tracking of every Corfax vessel, orbital mechanics calculations, and defensive system status indicators. The technology on display was far beyond what reconnaissance had documented. Admiral, Vextar began, keeping his voice carefully neutral. I must ask a question that has tactical importance for my report. How long have you been planning this operation? The coordination and preparation evident here suggests far more than 3 days or even 1 hour of organization. Since the day we detected your first scout ship, General, Chen replied without hesitation. 18 months ago. We knew you were coming long before you realized we could see you. 18 months? Zills gasped from his station. But we only began visible observation missions 6 months ago using advanced stealth technology. You should not have been able to detect anything before that. You began visible observation missions 6 months ago. Admiral Chen corrected with a slight smile. Your stealth systems are impressive by your standards, but not perfect. Our deep space monitoring stations detected gravitational anomalies from your ships long before you realized we could measure such distortions. We saw you watching us, so we decided to watch you back. Vextar felt his understanding of the situation shift again. Everything they had observed about Earth had been carefully managed. So everything we observed about your species was what you wanted us to observe. Your apparent primitiveness, your political fragmentation, your lack of coordinated defense. Yes, Chen confirmed. We needed you to believe we were primitive and disorganized. We needed you to target our population, specifically our children, because that was the one thing absolutely guaranteed to unify every human government, military organization, and civilian population under a single command structure. We knew from studying your previous conquests that you always targeted offspring. You did it on 47 worlds, so we knew you would do it here. You used your own offspring as bait, Vextar said, unable to keep the horror from his voice. You deliberately made your children vulnerable to alien abduction. What species does that? We use volunteers who understood the risk and chose to help protect humanity, Chen replied, her voice firm. Every adult who allowed themselves to be taken knew exactly what they were doing. Every parent who let their child participate understood that this was the only way to ensure the safety of all human children. We explained the situation, the risks, and the importance. Then we asked for volunteers. General, we had more volunteers than we could use. Parents lining up to offer themselves and their children for the intelligence mission. That is what you failed to understand about humans. We protect our children above everything. And sometimes it means some must risk themselves so all others can be safe. The children agreed to this? Vextar asked, thinking of the young humans he had seen during collection operations. Even the smallest ones had shown courage far beyond their apparent age. General, you clearly do not understand human children, Chun said, and for the first time there was warmth in her voice. When we explained that aliens were coming to take children away from their families, that these aliens had done this on dozens of other worlds, and that volunteers could help make sure no human child ever faced that threat again, we were overwhelmed with responses. Children as young as 6 years old volunteering to help protect their siblings and friends. Teenagers demanding to be included in the operation. We had to turn away thousands of volunteers because we could only use so many without arousing your suspicion. Sir, the sensor officer called out urgently. I am detecting massive energy buildups across the planet's surface. Much larger signatures than before. Power outputs exceeding anything we have observed. Admiral Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator revealing their teeth. General, the weapons we used to disable your fleet and the orbital projectiles we demonstrated represent approximately 1% of our total defensive capability. 1%. We wanted you to believe you faced significant resistance, so you would comply with our demands. But you should understand what we actually built in 18 months. Impossible, Vextar breathed. The weapons you demonstrated already exceed most species' planetary defense capabilities. The display behind Chun shifted to show a global view of Earth. Across every continent, hundreds of energy signatures became visible. Massive installations that had been hidden or disguised as civilian infrastructure. The power outputs were staggering. 18 months ago, Chun continued, when we realized an alien empire was planning to harvest our population, every nation on Earth agreed to share all military technology and scientific knowledge without reservation. Every scientist, engineer, and manufacturer was tasked with developing defense systems. We built this entire defensive network, thousands of installations, tens of thousands of weapons, complete orbital defense grid, all of it in less than 2 years. We unified our entire species around a single goal. Protect our children. Prepare for your arrival. The display showed the true scale of Earth's defenses. Orbital weapons platforms that had been invisible until now. Underground installations connected by global networks. Energy weapons that could reach beyond the planet's atmosphere. The entire planet had been transformed into an integrated fortress. We could have destroyed your fleet the moment it entered our solar system. Chun continued, her voice carrying absolute certainty. Our tracking systems detected your approach 3 days before you began operations. We had firing solutions calculated before you entered orbit. But simply destroying, you would not have sent the appropriate message to your empire. What message? Vextar asked, though he now understood. That Earth is defended by a species that will go to any length to protect its people, Chen replied. That humans are not prey. That we do not wait passively for threats to materialize. We identify them, we study them, we prepare for them, and we defeat them. We wanted your empire to understand that attempting to harvest humans comes with consequences. Real consequences. Strategic consequences. Sir, Commander Zills approached with his data pad, showing sensor analysis. I have been analyzing the defensive installations the humans have revealed. Based on the energy signatures, deployment patterns, and integration level, they have essentially turned their entire planet into a coordinated weapons platform. The computational resources required for this level of coordination would exceed our fleet's capabilities. More than that, Admiral Chen said, clearly having heard the comment through the communication link, we have also been busy in space beyond your detection range. The tactical display suddenly changed. New contacts appeared throughout Earth's solar system. Dozens of objects that had not been visible moments before. Stealth ships, defense platforms, weapons satellites, some in orbit around Earth's moon, others positioned at strategic points throughout the inner solar system. All had been completely invisible until this moment. Stealth ships, Vextar breathed, recognizing the configuration. You learned our stealth technology from the scout ships you captured and built your own version. How many? Enough, General, Chen replied. More than enough. We learned a great deal from the scout ships we captured 18 months ago. We studied your technology, reverse-engineered what we needed, and improved upon it. Then we built and positioned these installations throughout our solar system over the past year. All while you thought we were primitive and unaware of your presence. Vextar studied the tactical display with growing comprehension of the full scope of human preparation. His fleet was not just defeated. It was completely surrounded by defensive installations and mobile platforms that had been invisible until the humans chose to reveal them. Every Corfax ship was in a kill zone. Every escape route was covered. The humans had planned this down to the smallest detail. Admiral, what are your terms for our departure? Vextar asked, accepting the reality of his situation. Simple and non-negotiable, Chen replied. You will leave our solar system immediately using the trajectory we provide. You will report to your empire that Earth is now a Level 9 prohibited zone with absolute restrictions on contact. Any alien ship that enters our solar system without explicit permission will be destroyed without warning or negotiation. Any attempt to return will be met with offensive action. We have the capability to track your ships back to your empire's space if necessary. Do you understand these terms? I understand, Vextar said, but I cannot guarantee the empire will accept such terms from a single planet species. The empire has never recognized planetary sovereignty claims over an entire solar system. Then let me make this absolutely clear, General, Chan said, her voice hardening. What you have seen today represents our defensive capability. What we built to protect our home. If your empire forces us to develop offensive capabilities, if you make us bring war to your worlds instead of defending our own, we will do so. And we will apply the same level of planning, preparation, and determination to that task as we did to this one. You're threatening the Corfax Empire, Vextar said, but without heat. He was simply stating a fact. I am promising you that if the Empire ever threatens human children again, anywhere in this galaxy, we will demonstrate why it was a catastrophic mistake to underestimate a species that spent millions of years learning to survive on a death world, Chen replied. We're giving you this one chance to take this lesson back to your empire. Learn from it. Teach others. Spread the word across your territory. Earth is not a target. Humans are not prey. Our children are absolutely not to be touched. Ever. Vextar looked around his bridge at officers who had conquered dozens of worlds without significant resistance. They now sat in humbled silence as a single planet species dictated absolute terms to the Empire's finest fleet. His career was over. His reputation destroyed. But perhaps he could salvage something from this disaster. Perhaps he could ensure the Empire learned this lesson without further losses. General, Admiral Chun continued, her voice softening slightly, there's one more thing your Empire needs to understand about humans. We do not conquer other species for resources or territory. We do not build empires through subjugation. We do not seek to dominate the galaxy. We simply want to be left alone to raise our families in peace. But if you threaten our children, if you force us to become something other than what we want to be, We will show you why the universe should be genuinely afraid of what the children of Earth can become when you threaten what we love most. The transmission ended, and Vextar was left staring at a tactical display that showed his fleet completely surrounded and outmatched by a species he had dismissed as primitive just days earlier. "Sir," the navigation officer announced quietly, "all collection ships have returned to the fleet. All captives have been returned. We are ready to depart when you give the order." "Set course for Imperial space," Vextar ordered, his voice carrying the weight of defeat and hard-won wisdom. "Follow exactly the trajectory the humans provide. Maximum speed once we clear their solar system. No deviations, no delays." As the fleet began to move away from Earth following the designated departure route, Vextar composed the most important report of his career. How did one explain to Imperial Command that the Empire had encountered a species that treated warfare not as conquest or domination, but as problem-solving? A species that could plan an 18-month deception operation while building planet-wide defensive systems and still show mercy to their defeated enemies? A species that sacrificed their own children to gather intelligence and then used that intelligence to achieve complete victory without firing a shot until the perfect moment? "Commander Zills," he called, "when we reach Imperial space, I want you to personally deliver a recommendation to the Grand Council. Earth must be classified not simply as a prohibited zone, but as a Level 9 threat zone with the highest possible warnings attached." "What is the specific difference, sir?" Zills asked. "A prohibited zone is somewhere we choose not to go for political or resource reasons," Vextar explained. "A Level 9 threat zone is somewhere we cannot go because what lives there represents an existential threat to the Empire itself. You will recommend that any contact with Earth or human space be treated as a strategic military threat requiring Grand Council approval." "Sir," Zills said carefully, "Imperial Command will want to know how a single planet species with primitive technology could possibly pose a threat to the entire Corfax Empire. They will demand justification for such an unprecedented classification." Vextar looked back at the blue planet that was now shrinking on the display. In the distance, he could see some of the defense platforms the humans had revealed, standing silent guard over their world like ancient sentinels. Behind them, invisible but now known to exist, were hundreds more installations and weapons that could reach across space to punish any threat to human children. "You tell them that we encountered a species that does not fight wars to win territory or resources or glory," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "You tell them we found a species that fights wars exclusively to protect their young. And a species that fights for their children will sacrifice everything, learn anything, and become as dangerous as necessary to ensure their offspring survive. You tell them that humans can go from apparent primitives to credible military threat in 18 months when properly motivated. Imagine what they could become in 18 years if we force them to develop offensive capabilities." He turned to face Zills directly. "You tell Imperial Command that the humans have a saying that we learn the truth of today, a saying that should be spread across every world in the Empire and beyond. Hell hath no fury like a mother protecting her child. Today we learned what that means when applied to an entire planet of parents who spent 1,000,000 years learning to kill everything that threatened their young. We learned what happens when you give that species advanced technology, unified purpose, and 18 months to prepare." Zills nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the message. "I will deliver your report personally, General. The Empire needs to understand what we faced here." As the Corfax fleet fled toward Imperial space at maximum speed, Earth's defense platforms remained silent but vigilant, watched over by a species that had just taught the galaxy's most successful conquest empire a lesson they would never forget. Humans were not prey. They were not victims. They were not primitives waiting to be conquered or harvested or exploited. They were parents. And there was no force in the universe more dangerous, more determined, more absolutely terrifying than a parent protecting their child. General Vextar spent the long journey home writing and rewriting his report, knowing that it would change Imperial policy forever. Never again would the Corfax Empire target a world where the inhabitants were willing to turn their entire civilization into a weapon to protect their young. Never again would they underestimate a species based on technological assessment alone. Never again would they dismiss the power of unified parental instinct across an entire planet. The children of Earth had remained safe. The volunteers had returned home as heroes, and humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy not through conquest or aggression, but through an absolute demonstration that some lines should never be crossed. Some worlds should never be threatened, and human children should absolutely never, under any circumstances, be taken from their families. The word would spread across the galaxy. Species would learn, empires would understand, and Earth would be left alone, protected not by overwhelming force deployed, but by the terrifying knowledge of what force could be deployed if necessary. 18 months of preparation, 3,000 volunteers, 1-hour warning, 0 casualties among the returned humans, complete defeat of a conquest fleet that had successfully conquered 47 worlds. These numbers would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. They would become legend, warning, and promise all at once. The day the humans showed the galaxy what parents were capable of when their children were threatened. The day Earth transformed from potential conquest target to level 9 threat zone. The day humanity proved that some species should never be underestimated and some instincts should never be provoked. General Vextar's final report to the Corfax Empire would be classified at the highest level, distributed only to the Grand Council and senior military commanders. But its core message would spread through informal channels, whispered in strategy meetings, shared between species, passed along trade routes and diplomatic channels. A new truth for the galaxy to absorb and remember. Never threaten human children. Never underestimate deaf world parents. Never assume technology determines capability. And never, ever start a fight with a species that has absolutely nothing to lose when their offspring are in danger. The children of Earth were safe. The Empire had learned its lesson, and humanity had carved out its place in the galaxy not through conquest, but through an absolute demonstration of protective capability that would ensure their children would grow up free, safe, and forever guarded by parents who had proven they would go to any length, make any sacrifice, and become as dangerous as necessary to keep them that way. This was the day the galaxy learned to fear not human weapons or human technology or human numbers, but human love. The fierce, protective, absolutely unstoppable love of parents for their children. The kind of love that could unify a planet, reverse engineer alien technology, sacrifice thousands as volunteers, and create a defensive network that made even the most successful conquest empire in known space flee in terror. The children of Earth were safe, and they would remain safe, because their parents had shown the galaxy exactly what happened when you threatened them. And the galaxy would remember that lesson for generations to come.